A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Negotiators from both Israel and Hamas are in Egypt. They're working through Donald Trump's peace deal for Gaza. Back home, as the October 7th anniversary is still front and centre around the world, pro-Palestinian activists are reportedly demanding the New South Wales Supreme Court make a ruling on whether Israel is committing genocide 14,000 kilometres away in Gaza. They're also holding out the possibility of protesting at the Opera House this weekend, regardless of a court decision of its legality. Well, Mandy Worby is across a lot of the detail, and detail not always reported in mainstream media. Mandy's back with us for another Israel update. Hey, Mandy, welcome.
Hi, it's nice to be back. And hey, welcome back as well. You've been away.
I've been away and back on deck and feeling a little refreshed and, it's exciting.
Good.
And coming back into all of this controversy.
Yeah.
Let's talk first of all about remembering October 7. We're 2 years into this now. You've even been a part of some commemorations.
Yeah, well, it was 2 years yesterday, 7th of October massacre happened. There are commemorations all over the world amongst Jewish community. As you said, Ian and I have also been to one. But what's really sickening is that many of them have been targeted by anti-Israel mobs. Even more sickening is that pro-Hamas events have been organised yesterday. One in Bankstown, Sydney, where the event was called Glory to Our Martyrs, and it was held in honour of the Hamas terrorists themselves. There was a huge sign painted on the wall of a retail store in Melbourne, and this sign said, October 7, do it again. Then there was another sign in Melbourne above a corner store. This one said, Glory to Hamas. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but my understanding is that promotion of or support for a terrorist organisation in Australia is a criminal offence. It's illegal to do that. I am baffled as to how this is being permitted. Basic statements from our leaders such as, we are appalled, it really doesn't mean much. It's quite meaningless. It only serves to embolden this kind of poison and incitement because there's no consequence for it. There's no consequence when people do this. In Israel, however, the entire nation turned out in commemoration and mourning. The nation is still in mourning. There are 48 hostages still in terror tunnels in Gaza. Maybe 20 of them are alive, and Hamas has still not agreed to the ceasefire plan at this point.
Yes. And, just to pick up on your point there, when the law is not enforced, you get those who perhaps have all sorts of strange, weird, disturbing ideologies that are taking advantage of that.
And if it's not enforced, it sets a precedent.
It sets a precedent.
Right, how do you then enforce it for some but not for others,
Hey, the Trump-Gaza plan, the meeting in Egypt, what are you perceiving as going on there?
Well, it's basically a 21-point plan. Most of it is in favour of Hamas. Lots of concessions for them. The only real favourable point for Israel is the release of every hostage. So Israel has actually already agreed to this plan. They want the war over. They want their people back. That's the bottom line for them. But it's a very painful one. It's a painful agreement. So far, Hamas hasn't agreed to anything. The Qataris, who are vehemently pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, they've been funding Hamas to the tune of mega millions. I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the billions of dollars. And they've been harbouring their leaders. They keep saying that there are a lot more details that have to be worked out in the Gaza Trump plan. My understanding from the beginning of it is that President Trump said that all he really wanted from Hamas was a yes or no to the plan. If they said no, all hell would break out. Now, there's a lot of people are now kind of scratching their heads a little bit because he said such things before. In fact, he said it before he was even elected. And that's nearly a year on. And he kind of is like he keeps capitulating and postponing. When he was having a meeting recently with Prime Minister Netanyahu, apparently Bibi, while in agreement to the plan, he's already agreed to it, said he didn't really think the plan meant much, that in effect, while he was saying that he was in agreement with it, he didn't really think that it would mean anything. Now, President Trump automatically there said that Bibi was being very negative. He threw in an expletive as he said he was being negative. But here's the thing that President Trump doesn't really understand is that Israel has been down this road so many times before. She has been attacked and forced into war by surrounding nations, by terrorist groups both within and without her borders. They then make these agreements, the ceasefires are signed, and these nations and terror groups then break them. They have every time. Like on October 6th, there was a ceasefire agreement in place after, like Ian and I were in Israel in May of 2023, and Hamas were attacking Israel then. A ceasefire agreement was in place on October 6th, and then Hamas broke it on October 7th. So as far as Israel is concerned, this is just history repeating itself again and again and again. And this is where I think that Donald Trump doesn't understand that. He doesn't get it. And that is why Bibi and most Israelis believe the agreement that with Hamas, it really means that there's going to be another war at some point in the future, because Israel is allowed to defend themselves, but only to a point, and she's never allowed to win. That's the attitude of the world. So,
it's sobering, isn't it?
Yeah.
To think that, the eyes of the world right now are on Egypt. And there's hope that there's going to be a peace plan, but it's sobering to think that because Israel has gone through this so many times in the past, no matter what the outcome, in some sense, it's business as usual for the enemies of Israel who'll continue to bring their attacks. It's not going to be an easy thing to stop the attacks against Israel.
No, because, and this is the thing, President Trump came out and said he believed that Hamas really, 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 really does want to come up with a lasting peace agreement with Israel. But what he's not taking into consideration is the ideology that drives them. Hamas has their own charter that they believe was divinely given to them. And that charter says that they exist only for the extermination of Israel and killing every Jew through jihad. That is what they believe. And if they don't do that, then they're disobeying their God. And they're allowed to make agreements, they're allowed to have ceasefire plans, knowing that their ideology also allows them to break it, which they have consistently done. So it's almost like President Trump is desperate for peace. I understand. I really believe that he really wants to bring about peace. But it's like he doesn't understand this is not about a financial deal for Hamas. It's not money that motivates them. They'll take all the money and use it for their terrorism, but they're not in it to make a financial deal to build a condo and live a happy life. They are in it for their ideology, and President Trump doesn't get that. It's concerning.
It's a lot of people who don't get that because it's a Western mindset,
precisely,
or Christian mindset that says you can resolve these things and there can be peace. But you've got a different mindset, this Islam mindset that says we have our own religious foundations for what we do, and we don't listen to what we might think is, our Western way of Christian thinking, that there might be some sort of logical conclusion.
Well, that ideology is diametrically opposed to a Western ideology, that they're not compatible. And we're seeing that in a lot of places around the world.
Okay, what have you been observing, Mandy, so far as, the response that's been seen around the world about this plan?
You would think that with this deal most people think this is going to be it. This is a done deal. The war's going to be over any second as soon as Hamas agrees, because Israel already has. You'd think that these protests and marches would be in the street dancing and celebrating and blowing balloons and having parties and get out the ice cream truck. No, they've stepped up the vitriol and the hatred en masse. It's bigger than ever, and the vitriol is worse than ever. If the war ends, what excuse will they have to be out in the streets condemning Israel? This is a problem. Everywhere, there's been so many attacks, it's absolutely worse than ever. And you even mentioned that there wants to be this great big protest on the streets of the Opera House in Sydney, Australia, and using the court system around the world to condemn Israel for genocide that she's not committing. It's worse than ever. But what I would like to say is that we live at a time when lawlessness is the primary characteristic of our societies. At least it looks that way to me, Neil. Jesus said in Matthew 24:12, because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. And he was describing, there's a question actually from his disciples about what the world would look like before he came back at the end of the age. And he was describing it, and it's very hard to look at the world we live in now and not believe that we're in that age. I mean, have you noticed how lacking in love and compassion our societies are? How much the collective we there, champions and celebrates death over life, from the most vulnerable in the womb to the most vulnerable at the end of life. I mean, Charlie Kirk, he was murdered before the eyes of the world, and so many who were on the opposite political view to him laughed, they danced, they celebrated his murder, and they actually were calling for more murders of those they disagree with politically. The love of many, even just basic human decency and consideration for other people, is very cold, and lawlessness is the result.
And I imagine that social media and the coverage that bypasses regular channels exacerbates all of that. And
very much
people, the real element of our base human nature is revived in so many. And that might be an obvious thing to some, and it certainly looks obvious to me too. Hey, what do you make of the latest flotilla that has been stopped, but Greta Thunberg has been on there and claims she's been tortured and all sorts of things.
I'll tell you, Neil, that was a joke from start to finish. The claim that it was a humanitarian endeavour was a lie. The Vatican and numerous other European nations all offered to take their humanitarian aid and ensure it reached Gaza, but they refused those offers. They claimed that Israel sent a drone against one of their vessels when they were off the coast of Tunisia, but the Tunisian government said there was no record or trace of any drone sent at the vessels. It turns out that somebody because there's video footage on board, one of the crew members set off a flare that started a fire on their own vessel. So they set themselves on fire and then blamed Israel. When Israel did actually board them, the crews beforehand threw all of their mobile phones. There was hundreds of people part of this flotilla. They threw all their phones into the water, polluting the water with their lithium-ion batteries into the sea, something that Greta Thunberg, the environmentalist activist, shouldn't have done. I mean, I want to say to her, how dare you? The crew also set up live streaming cameras. So lo and behold, when the Israelis actually very calmly got on board the vessels, deboarded the people, and there was no humanitarian aid on board, Neil. There was a couple of boxes of gauze, but no humanitarian aid at all. They were taken to Israel. They were given food, drink, medical checks, clean clothing. One of the Spanish activists bit one of the Israeli medical workers. They were all sent home, and then once they got home, Greta claimed that they had been tortured by the Israelis. But I can guarantee you with 100% certainty that every interaction that was had between the activists and between Israel was documented and monitored. There was not a single act of violence or torture. The whole thing was a PR stunt from Hamas. And I know you want to ask me, how do we know that it was from Hamas? Go and ask me.
Hey, Mandy, how do we know it was from Hamas?
Well, the IDF, now they've gone into Gaza City, found documentation and correspondence that was sent to the flotilla from Hamas leadership, because some of the flotilla members were actually Hamas members, about what they needed to do, about the funding, promotion of the event. The flotilla was organised, bought and paid for by Hamas. That means every crew member was working with Hamas terrorists, and the documentation to prove that has all been released publicly online. In fact, here's something the crew and the organisers don't know about. There was a journalist who infiltrated the crew and documented conversations with video and talked about their motivations and what they wanted to do. One actually said they wanted to get a bomb and they wanted to bomb Israel. And the journalist said, what? All Israelis? And they said, every single Israeli. They want to kill every single Israeli. That will probably be released in a documentary or a film at some point. I've seen excerpts of it. But the whole thing was a PR stunt for Hamas. It had zero to do with humanitarian aid or help for the Gazans. It's all about demonising Israel and promoting Hamas terrorism.
Mandy, Worby, you do like to tell it as you see it, and more likely the way that it is.
That's how it was.
Hey, all eyes are on the peace plan, and, the idea of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas releasing the hostages held in Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, humanitarian aid, access and rebuilding efforts. But the potential disarmament of Hamas, a major sticking point. There's going to be all sorts of things that are going to be major sticking points.
Yeah. They don't want to hand over their weapons because they want to maintain control. They want to do this again. It's what drives them.
And as you say, no matter what happens with a piece of paper that may well make the global headlines, for the Israelis, it may actually be business as usual in their own defence, because it might not stop the various groups. And it's not just one. There's a lot of guns pointed towards Israel. And we're reminded once again, as I often say when we do this segment, as Christian believers, we are to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, because that becomes so significant at times like this. Praying for the peace of Jerusalem makes so much sense, because praying for the peace of Jerusalem is like praying for the peace of the world.
It is. And the return of our Messiah, because that's when real peace will come.
Wonderful insights as always. Mandy Worby with an Israel update. Mandy, thank you so much for sharing your heart with us once again today on 2020.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.